I had absolutely nothing to do with the making that bomb.
I had never really seriously hurt anybody that I know about, you know. And to take the step of killing somebody, I don't know if I'd have been prepared to do that.
Welcome to The Real News. I'm Eddie Conway, coming to you from Baltimore. And thanks for joining me for this special segment of Rattling the Bars. America has hundreds of political prisoners, some known, some unknown. And just recently, I noticed that something was going on in the Midwest with the health of one of those prisoners. Ed Poindexter has been held for 40-some years in Omaha, Nebraska, and surrounding prisons. And his health has been in question for several months now. The person, Ed Rice, that was held with him had recently passed away. And I'm concerned about the attention that's being focused on this political prisoner's case. So joining me to kind of like give us an update and an overview is Kietryn Zychal. She's a supporter of Poindexter and also a journalist. Kietryn, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Eddie.
Can you just give me some background on Ed Poindexter? Why is he in prison and for so long?
Okay, well, first of all, I would like to give you a message from Ed. I visited him yesterday at the Nebraska State Penitentiary, and he wanted to thank you very, very much for doing a show on his case, because he and David Rice, who changed his name to Mondo Walonga, they've gotten very little attention in the media in the 46, 47 years that they've been in prison. And Mondo, of course, is now dead. He died last year. And what happened to put Mondo and Ed in jail is that a 911 call was made on August 17th, 1970 in Omaha, Nebraska, and a male voice, deep male voice, reported that a woman had been dragged screaming into a vacant house in North Omaha in the Black community.
Okay, on 28th in Ohio, man. I'm here on 28th in Ohio, man. The address 2866, 2867 is old vacant house. 2866. 2867. It's an old vacant house. I mean, this dude has drugged this woman off and she's screaming and shit. I don't know what's going on. And this dude has drugged this woman off. She's screaming and shit, and I don't know what's going on. I mean, I got across the street. I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know what's going on, man. 2866 to 2867. It's an old vacant house with a bunch of weeds around it. 2866 to 2867. It's an old vacant house with a bunch of weeds around it. She's in there screaming and shit. Screaming and shit. My address is 2865. My address is 2865.
And 2 police officers were assigned to cover that call. 2 were assigned as backup. And then 4 police officers responded to the call because they heard it on the radio. And one of those police officers was killed when a suitcase bomb exploded as he was exiting the house. Some of the officers went in the house to look for the woman who was supposed to be screaming. And then the first officer to exit the house either tripped over the suitcase or kicked it, and it exploded, and it killed him, demolished the house, knocked people over who were standing on the street. And within 5 days, the police received information that a boy named Dwayne Peak had been seen that night carrying a suitcase. And I have a suitcase back here. Later on, I'll demonstrate for you what he's supposed to have done with that suitcase. And Dwayne Peak became the prime suspect in that officer's murder because he was seen carrying a suitcase that night. And his sister, once they arrested his entire family and took them down to the police station, his sister did, tell the police that she had driven him to the neighborhood of 28th in Ohio with that suitcase, and she dropped him off around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And then the next day, he had made some statements about thinking that he was responsible for killing the police officer. And he was on the lam until about the end of August. And when he finally submitted himself to the police, his first statement was, "I got a note telling me to go to the Lothrop drugstore and pick up a suitcase behind the incinerator." And then he was supposed to have the suitcase at 28th and Ohio that evening, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And then he was supposed to put the suitcase not at 2867 Ohio, but to leave it in a vacant lot on the field side of a fence. And then he was supposed to go to a payphone at 2 in the morning. The phone rang, and a woman's voice that he did not recognize told him to call 911 and report that a woman had been dragged screaming into 2867 Ohio. And I think that portions of that story may be true, because it is not possible to carry a suitcase bomb with a clothespin triggering device for 6 hours on a Sunday afternoon, take it into 3 different vehicles, throw it in the trunk of the last vehicle where you're getting the ride to 28th and Ohio, because 7 people are in the car, including your 2 small nieces who are 3 years old and 1 year old. And so after 3 days in custody, that first statement Dwayne Peak made on August 28th, by August 31st, he gave a completely different story to the county attorney, where he said, "Oh, these 2 guys, Rice and Poindexter, they made the bomb at David Rice's house. Ed Poindexter made it. I watched him do it in the kitchen. And then they told me, this 15-year-old boy, that I should pick up the bomb and deliver it to 28th and Ohio and make the 911 call." And that's why Mondo and Ed are in jail, because no one ever questioned the absolute absurdity of that claim that Dwayne Peak made, that he carried a bomb with a clothespin triggering device, and I'll show you the device in a second, for 6 hours on Sunday afternoon. People just always assumed that that boy was guilty, that he had the bomb, and that he must have made the bomb with his relatives.
Well, now, what happened? Did they have a trial, a jury trial? I mean...
Oh, my God. Yeah, of course they had a trial. It started on April 1st, 1971, and the jury was 11 white people and 1 black man. And the ATF presented evidence, forensic evidence, but mainly they were convicted on the testimony of the boy, Dwayne Peak, because he gave this elaborate story of, making the bomb on Monday, August 10th, and then meeting with Mondo or Ed, or trying to meet up with them and missing them, seeing Ed on Friday night, and then picking up the bomb on Sunday, and getting a car ride from a woman named Norma Alfrecht, to pick up the bomb at David Rice's house. So because this story was so elaborate, people assumed, and it was detailed, people assumed that it must be true. And the attorneys never really questioned, is it possible to carry a suitcase bomb with a clothespin triggering device for 6 hours on a Sunday afternoon without having it explode?
Okay, so you say that there is evidence, his attorneys did dig up evidence, maybe Amnesty International, so on. What kind of evidence? Okay,
the first and foremost thing is that there was a Jesuit priest named Father William Cunningham, who was David Rice's appellate attorney. And Father Cunningham actually argued the case before the United States Supreme Court in Stone versus Powell, Wolf versus Rice, which was his appeal based on the search of his house being illegal. It was a Fourth Amendment case. Father Cunningham did an incredible amount of service for David Rice, and he filed numerous Freedom of Information Act requests because he was being denied the right to do discovery, so Cunningham had to file FOIAs instead. And so some of the major pieces of evidence that they got are that the 911 call made to the police, Dwayne Peak testified at the trial that he made the call, but the Omaha police, well, first of all, the defense attorneys never listened to the 911 call. The prosecution never played the 911 call at the trial. And then the FBI and the Omaha police had some communication about a memo where the Omaha police requested that the FBI send the tape back to them. The FBI was going to analyze the tape, do voice analysis on it. And then in October, 2 months after the bombing, the Omaha police sent this memo, Glenn Gates, the assistant chief of police, saying, well, don't analyze that tape. Send it back to us. We're not going to play it at the trial. It would be prejudicial against our case against Rice and Poindexter. And the reason that the tape was prejudicial is that it's not the voice of Dwayne Peak. And so the person who is actually responsible for killing Larry Menard, the identity of the 911 caller, that is unknown to this day. It's definitely not Mondo's voice. It's definitely not Ed's voice. Dwayne Peak was actually submitted to voice analysis in 2006, and you can online, you can listen to the half-hour deposition or a 1-minute edited piece, and it's not Dwayne Peak's voice. So nobody knows who really made the call to 911 that lured the police to the house. That's the most important piece of evidence that the courts don't seem to care about. The second piece of evidence is something I just alluded to, where there's an FBI memo obtained way back in the 70s through the Freedom of Information Act that says Glenn Gates requests that the FBI not analyze this tape. The Omaha police want it back, and we don't want to use it at the trial. So that's a really good piece of evidence that should have gotten them back into court, but did not. The third piece of evidence is a letter that Dwayne Peak wrote the night of the preliminary hearing in September, a month after the bombing. He expresses remorse for what has happened, and he alludes to other people who might have been involved. The letter's very vague, but it definitely shows that this boy was in a state of mind where he had been coerced, and he was doing what he thought he had to do. And those are really the major pieces of evidence. And also, here's another piece of evidence that never made it into court. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, this is a picture of David Rice right before he turned himself in. He is flanked by police officers. This is Pittman Foxall, who's known David Rice since he was a little boy. Here you can barely see Marvin McClarity. David Rice turned himself into these two African-American detectives. Notice how his hands are shoved deep into his pockets. And it's August. Obviously, he's nervous. His hands are probably hot and sweaty. When David Rice turned his clothes over to the police, they found chunks of dynamite visible to the naked eye in his front pants pocket. But his hands did not test positive for dynamite. So how do you put your hands in your pockets when your pockets have so much dynamite in them the chemist can see that it's dynamite without, having to analyze it? And so David Rice has always contended. Unfortunately, nobody noticed this photograph until the mid-90s when I first started doing my research, and I noticed it and, put the two and two together. But, it never made it into an appeal. It never made it back into court. But it's really, it's good visual proof that you can't put your hands in your pockets if your pockets are full of dynamite and not get dynamite on your hands.
What's the state of Ed's health right now?
Well, Ed was rushed to the hospital on December 19th, and on December 20th, he had triple bypass surgery. I visited him in basically the prison hospital 2 weeks ago, and he showed me his scar. It's a 10-inch scar, and I visited him yesterday. He's back at Nebraska State Penitentiary, and of course he's in a wheelchair. He's not walking right now. I mean, he walks a little bit for exercise, but he's recovering from triple bypass. And he told me that the scar was actually oozing. That when he took his shirt off, his T-shirt was kind of covered in like the scar was like pulling open, and it looked like it was healed when I saw him 2 weeks ago. So I'm very concerned because Ed has diabetes, and so it's very difficult to heal from wounds when you have diabetes. So, Ed needs, for those of you who believe in God, Ed needs prayers, but,
All right, so thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for caring about Ed.
Okay, and thank you for joining this episode of Rattling the Bars.